Welcome to Salem 1692, where whispers spread faster than the Black Plague. People are pointing fingers, screaming and accusing each other of witchcraft, and for what? Well, relatively mundane, everyday things, apparently, but seriously, what was in the water? What drove them to such extremes? Maybe they just needed a hobby. Over 200 people were accused, their crime apparently being witches. Talk about a bad day. Imagine getting up on the wrong side of the bed and ending up on trial. Neighbors turned on neighbors, friends on friends. It was like a really intense game of guess who, but with higher stakes. Spoiler alert, everyone loses. The accusations were often based on the flimsiest of evidence, fueled by fear and superstition. She looked at me funny. It was apparently a solid case. Imagine if that was a thing today. Imagine being accused of witchcraft because you had an argument with someone or acted a little different. Sorry, I just like my coffee black. Guess that makes me a witch. This wasn't just about witches and magic. It reflected the anxieties of a community on edge. They needed a hobby, clearly. Maybe knitting or something less. Witch hunting. Salem was a village in crisis, grappling with disease, economic hardship, and the threat of Native American attacks. Basically, it was the 17th century version of a bad year, like 2020, but with more pitchforks. In such uncertain times, people craved explanations, scapegoats. Blame the witches was the go-to solution, because why not? The devil lurking in the shadows became a convenient answer, because why not blame the ultimate bad guy? It's not like he could defend himself. The Salem Witch Trials weren't just a historical blip. They were a stark reminder of the power of fear and ignorance, and how not to handle a crisis. Seriously, don't try this at home. They serve as a cautionary tale, urging us to question, to think critically, and to stand up against injustice. Because let's face it, we don't want a repeat of that mess. In the stifling world of Salem, gossip wasn't just idle chatter. It was the 17th century version of social media. A whisper here, a rumor there, and suddenly you were on trial for your life. Talk about a bad day. If your neighbor acted strangely, perhaps they were consorting with the devil, or maybe they just needed a nap. If your cow got sick after an argument, maybe you were a witch, because obviously cows are the ultimate judges of character. These suspicions weren't based on logic or evidence. They were fueled by fear and the unknown, and a dash of paranoia for good measure. Salem was a deeply religious community where belief in the supernatural was as common as Sunday sermons. Women, especially those who were different, outspoken, independent, or simply disliked, became easy targets. Because who needs individuality, right? If you didn't fit the mold, if you dared to challenge the norms, you risked being labeled a witch. Conformity was the name of the game. It was a patriarchal society where women were expected to be subservient. Because nothing says progress like keeping half the population in check. The Salem Witch Trials were a terrifying example of how quickly fear can escalate into mass hysteria. Think of it as the original viral trend. A single accusation could set off a chain reaction leading to imprisonment and death. All because someone couldn't keep their gossip to themselves. Forget the pointy hats and broomsticks. Those are just for Halloween parties. The image of a witch in Salem was far more insidious, often rooted in everyday behavior. You know, like being a normal person. Did you keep to yourself, shunning social gatherings, or maybe just an introvert? Were you known for your sharp tongue, your quick wit, witch, or perhaps just the life of the party? Did you possess knowledge of herbs and remedies? Definitely a witch or a medieval pharmacist. These seemingly innocuous traits could mark you as different, as a potential servant of the devil, because why not? In a society governed by strict religious codes, any deviation from the norm was met with suspicion and a side of paranoia. Independent women, especially those who challenged authority or possessed unconventional knowledge, were particularly vulnerable. Because who needs independence, right? A woman who lived alone, supporting herself, might be seen as suspicious, or just ahead of her time. The traits that marked a witch in Salem weren't about supernatural abilities, they were about social control, and a dash of hysteria. It was a way to punish those who didn't conform, who dared to challenge the status quo, because nothing says order like a good witch hunt. Imagine being judged not on your actions, but on the visions of a troubled girl. Sounds fair, right? That was the chilling reality of spectral evidence in the Salem Witch Trials. Because who needs facts when you have dreams? This bizarre form of evidence based on dreams and visions held terrifying power in the courtroom. Move over, CSI. If someone claimed your spirit was tormenting them, even in their dreams, you were as good as guilty. Sweet dreams, indeed. Spectral evidence was like a twisted game of telephone, but with higher stakes than a playground rumour. One person, often a young girl, would claim to see the accused's spirit harming them. Because why not trust the imagination of a child? These accusations, fueled by fear and suggestion, would spread like wildfire. Talk about a viral trend. Soon others would claim to see the same spectral tormentors, solidifying the accused's guilt. It's like a spooky chain letter. In the charged atmosphere of Salem, where fear and paranoia reigned supreme, spectral evidence held immense weight, heavy enough to sink you. It played on the deepest fears of the community, reinforcing the belief in witchcraft and the devil's insidious influence. The evidence used against accused witches in Salem often bordered on the ludicrous. Did your eyes twitch? Guilty. Maybe you just had something in your eye. Did you own a pet cat? Witchcraft. Did someone claim to have seen your spirit, even though you were miles away? Well, that's proof enough. Ghosting before it was cool. The trials were less about justice and more about confirming existing suspicions. Any unusual behaviour, any slight deviation from the norm, could be twisted into evidence of witchcraft, and so better not sneeze in public. It was a system ripe for abuse, fueled by personal grudges, fear, and a desperate need to find someone to blame for misfortune. Imagine a courtroom where a child's scream or a strange look could seal your fate. Talk about a tough crowd. The absurdity of the evidence used in Salem underscores the dangers of unchecked power and mass hysteria, and the importance of not taking everything at face value. Vengeful whispers how personal disputes turned deadly, or how to win an argument in 1692. In the pressure cooker of Salem, personal vendettas simmered and boiled over, often disguised as accusations of witchcraft. Did a neighbour refuse to sell you land? Accuse them of witchcraft? Problem solved. Did someone spread rumours about your family? Time for some supernatural revenge. The Salem Witch Trials became a twisted stage for settling scores. Accusations fueled by jealousy, greed, and long-held resentments had devastating consequences. And you thought your office politics were bad. It was a time when whispers could kill, when a single accusation could destroy lives and tear families apart. The case of Rebecca Nurse, a respected elderly woman, illustrates this point. Even the nicest grandma wasn't safe. Despite her impeccable reputation, she was condemned as a witch, a testament to the power of personal grudges in fueling the hysteria. So much for neighborly love. The Salem Witch Trials remind us that darkness often lurks beneath the surface of seemingly peaceful communities, and that sometimes the real monsters are the ones pointing fingers. Picture this, a contagious fear spreading like wildfire through the village. No, not the latest gossip about who stole whose cow. That was Salem in 1692, a time when witch hunt wasn't just a metaphor. The accusations, the trials, the executions, all fueled by a collective panic that spiraled out of control. Kind of like a 17th century version of a viral tweet. This wasn't just about individual accusations, it was about a collective fear of the unknown, of unseen forces at work, or maybe just a bad case of the Mondays. The strict religious climate, combined with social and economic anxieties, created a breeding ground for suspicion and paranoia. In such an environment, accusations of witchcraft became a way to explain the unexplainable, to find scapegoats for misfortune, like blaming the dog for eating your homework. As the trials progressed, the fear intensified, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of accusations and condemnations. Think of it as the original chain email, but with more pitchforks. People were afraid to speak out against the accusers, fearing they too would be labelled as witches. This climate of fear silenced dissent and allowed the hysteria to flourish unchecked, kind of like a really bad game of telephone. The Salem Witch Trials serve as a stark reminder of the dangers of mass hysteria, and the importance of not jumping to conclusions. Centuries have passed since the Salem Witch Trials, yet the echoes of that dark chapter still resonate today. While we no longer burn witches at the stake, because, fire codes, the same patterns of accusation, fear, and scapegoating continue to surface in our modern world. From online witch hunts to getting cancelled, the urge to find someone to blame for our problems remains strong. It's like a hobby we just can't quit. Think about the ways we use social media to shame, ostracize, and silence those who hold different views, and a good old-fashioned digital mob. A single tweet taken out of context can ignite a firestorm of outrage, destroying reputations and careers. Who knew 280 characters could be so explosive? This digital age, while offering unprecedented connectivity, also provides new platforms for public shaming and the spread of misinformation. The wonders of technology. Consider the persecution of minority groups based on fear and prejudice, because apparently some traditions never go out of style. The language may have changed, but the underlying patterns of fear, othering, and the urge to blame persist. It's like a bad rerun we can't escape. The lessons of Salem are not confined to the history books. They serve as a stark warning for our times. So let's try not to repeat history, shall we? While the Salem Witch Trials cast a long shadow, like a really bad sequel no one asked for, it's important to remember that even in the darkest of times, courage and compassion can prevail. Yes, even when your neighbors are accusing you of witchcraft because their cow got sick. The story of Salem is not just a tale of fear and injustice, it's also a testament to the power of resistance, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring hope for a better tomorrow. But because, let's face it, it couldn't get much worse. Think of individuals like Reverend John Hale, who initially supported the trials but later denounced them, recognizing the horror he had helped unleash. His journey reminds us that it's never too late to change course, to admit our mistakes, and to fight for justice, even if it means admitting you were wrong, really wrong. Consider the stories of those who spoke out against the trials, risking their own reputations and safety to defend the accused. Their bravery reminds us that even in the face of overwhelming fear, individuals can make a difference, and that speaking truth to power is essential to combating injustice, or at least trying not to get burned at the stake. The legacy of Salem is not just one of darkness and despair. It's also a story of resilience, resistance, and the enduring human spirit. Because, let's be honest, humans are pretty stubborn. By learning from the mistakes of the past, by embracing critical thinking and compassion, we can strive to create a world where the horrors of Salem are never repeated, or at least where we don't accuse our neighbors of witchcraft over a bad harvest. So, let's take a page from history and remember that a little bit of courage, a dash of compassion, and a whole lot of common sense can go a long way. And maybe, just maybe, we can avoid another witch hunt.